My name is Marcus Stalin. Today I'm going to be talking about 2 Kings 1 and 3. Now, in 2 Kings 1, we meet King Ahab, but don't get too attached because he passes away in the first verse. Now, after King Ahab passed away, Moab rebelled. But at this time, the son of King Ahab, who was very wicked, more wicked than anyone before him, son Ahaziah was the current king, and he fell out of the lattice, which is basically a window from his palace in Samaria. Poor guy, and was seriously injured. Makes sense. So he sent messengers to the temple of Baal Zebub, the idol of Ekron, to ask whether he would recover. Now, he could have asked the one true God, but no, he is kind of like his father, wicked. He's wicked. So, he is asking an idol, who is the idol of Ekron. Now, let's go to this. Now, actually, remember, God sees everything. It said in the Bible, the eyes of the Lord are in every place. Now, here, but the angel of the Lord told Elijah, who was from Tisbe, go and confront the messenger of the king of Samaria and ask them, is there no God in Israel? Why are you going to Baal Zebub, the god of Ekron, to ask whether the king will recover? So these guys, the messengers from King Ahaziah, were on their way to that Baal Zebub, but Elijah was like super speed guy. He met them on their way and said this. Exactly what the Lord said. Is there no God in Israel that you need to ask Baal Zebub, the idol of Ekron? So they went back on their way to tell. So this is what Elijah said. King Ahaziah will not recover. He will die there. So the messengers went back to King Ahaziah to tell them the news. Now, King Ahaziah was not actually happy with this. So he said, who told you this? They said, Elijah. Ahaziah said, now they didn't know it was Elijah. They said, a man on our road on the way for that place. Ahaziah said, how did he look? Then they describe basically John the Baptist in the New Testament. A hairy man with a leather belt and maybe or maybe not 8 locusts. Okay, it's not mentioned like that in the Bible, but he did look kind of like John the Baptist, but copy and paste. So, King Ahaziah was like, he just exclaimed, that's Elijah! So what happened was Elijah was sitting on the hill, like every good prophet should do. So, Ahaziah sent a troop, basically an army of 50 men. And this is what the commander of the army sent the So this is what the army commander said. O man of God, come down and come with us. So this is what Elisha said. If I am really a man of God, let fire come down from heaven and destroy all your troops. And fire came down from heaven and destroyed all the 50 men and the commander. Yep. It reminds me of the time when fire came down from heaven to burn the sacrifice. That whole Elijah on Mount Carmel incident. I think everyone knows that story. Okay, so then Ahaziah sent another troop of 50 men, and that commander didn't learn the previous guy's lesson. He said, "Oh man of God, come down from the mountain." Yeah, if I were him, I think I have learned my lesson. But Elijah said, if I am really a man of God, let fire come down from heaven and destroy you and your 50 men. And again, the same thing happened. Yeah. Those are the consequences for that decisions. Then King Ahaziah sent another troop of 50 men. But this guy learnt his lesson. He came up. This time he came up. Let me read you the verse. 2 Kings 1:13. Once more the king sent a third captain with 50 men. But this time the captain went up the hill and fell to his knees before Elijah. He pleaded with him, O man of God, please spare my life and the lives of these your 50 servants. This is verse 14. See how the fire from heaven came down and destroyed the first two groups. But now, please spare my life. Yeah, that guy learned his lesson. So, yeah. So, verse 15. Then the angel of the Lord said to Elijah, Go down with him and do not be afraid of him. So Elijah got up and went with him to the king. And Elijah said to the king, basically the same thing. This is what the Lord said. You will die here. Basically, this is what Elijah said. This is what the Lord says. Why did you send messengers to Baal-zebub, the idol of Ekron, to ask whether you will recover? Is there no God in Israel to answer your question? Therefore, because you have done this, you will never leave the bed you are lying on. You will surely die. Yeah. So, Ahaziah died just as the Lord had promised through Elijah. Now, the thing is, Ahaziah died on his deathbed, because that was his deathbed. But let's look at this thing. He didn't have any descendants. In the Bible, people who have done wicked things are always being left without descendants. That means their lineage will never be brought forth. They basically lost to history. But Joram was his brother, which basically means he's also the son of Ahab. He's also wicked. He's a wicked dude. So, what happened was, he replaced Ahaziah. And as usual, this is how 2 Kings 1 ends. The rest of the events in Ahaziah's reign and everything he did are recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Israel. Now that book is most likely 2nd and 1st Chronicles. There's also one for Judah. So that's 2 Kings 1. Time for a bonus chapter. The bonus chapter is 2 Kings 2. 2 Kings 2. 2 Kings 2nd chapter. Alright, so it's about Elijah being taken up into heaven. Now, Elijah had a protege named Elisha. So, when the Lord was about to take Elijah up into heaven in a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were traveling from Gilgal. Now, Elisha is Elijah's protege. Right now, it's basically like prophet in training guy. We learn more about Elisha in 2 Kings 3. Come on, we'll go there later. Now back to this. So, now they were in Gilgal. Now, let's look at where Gilgal was. Salvi. Now, there is lots of dispute on where ancient Gilgal was. But I'm going to talk about, let's look at where modern day Gilgal is. It's in the Jordan Valley. Now, we'll take that because later it's mentioned that they went to Jordan. So, most likely this place was around the Jordan Valley. And it is also close to Jericho. Ancient Jericho, that is. Okay. Alright, so they were at Gilgal. But Elijah said to Elisha this. Stay here, for the Lord has told me to go to Bethel. Bethel. It's another city. But Elisha replied, As surely as the Lord lives, and you yourself live, I will never leave you. So they went down together to Bethel. The group of prophets from Bethel came to Elisha. and asked him, "Did you know that that the Lord is going to take your master away from you today?" Of course I know, Elisha answered, "but be quiet about it." Then Elijah said to Elisha, "Now, well, we'll go back into that. But what is all of this about? There's like a sandwich chunk in here. Let's chew the sandwich off. Alright, so let's look at what this all is. You might ask, why did Elisha tell Elisha to stay there? And why did Elisha disobey? So, let me explain. This could not be disobeying, maybe. We do not know all the things God, God wants. But the thing is, this most likely is a test. We don't know what that test is, but it could be a test to see if Elisha is fit to be a prophet. And most likely, Elisha asking this, "Don't remind me about it," is most likely him like, "I like this guy so much, but he's going to leave me today." It might be that he just misses someone. Like if your friend is leaving town, you'll feel sad, won't you? So that could be it. So now let's look at where Bethel is. Now, Bethel is most likely about 8 miles away from Gilgal. 8 miles. Now, they might have taken a horse, but most likely they walked on foot. Yeah, that must have been painful. But there's more for coming. So, let's look. Alright. So, now Elijah says to Elisha that stay here, for the Lord has told me to go to Jericho. But Elisha replied again, "As surely as the Lord lives, and you yourself live, I will never leave you." So they went on together to Jericho. So let's see where Jericho is located. Gilgal was located in the Jordan Valley. Bethel was about 8 miles away from Gilgal. So let's see where Jericho is. So now Jericho is another place in modern day West Bank in the Jordan Valley. So then a group of prophets from Jericho came to Elisha and asked him, "Did you know that the Lord is going to take your master away from you today?" "Of course I know," Elisha answered, "but be quiet about it." The same thing, Elisha doesn't want to be reminded about that. Then Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here, for the Lord has told me to go to the Jordan River." But again Elisha replied, "As surely as the Lord lives, and you yourself live, I will never leave you." So they went on together. So 3 times he was tested. The same way Peter was asked, "Do you love me?" 3 times. So this might be a test. So now 50 men from the group of prophets. The group of prophets most likely serve Elijah, and most likely God told him that Elijah was going, because he was going right now. Also went and watched from a distance as Elijah and Elisha stopped beside the Jordan River. Now let's see. They most likely do not have a boat, so they can't go across. But they most likely also aren't very great swimmers, and also most likely they can't swim across the Jordan River. So how are they gonna get across? Well, let's see. Elijah folded his cloak together and struck the water with it. The river divided, and the two of them went across on dry ground. This water was on the ground for so long, and now it's dry. Now, all of a sudden, a river parting. This was certainly a miracle. Let's look what happened next. Now the same thing kind of happened in the Red Sea. I wonder what Moses was thinking up in heaven. So when they came to the other side, Elijah said to Elisha, "Tell me what I can do for you before I am taken away." What does taken away mean? Because everywhere it's mentioned taken away, taken away, taken away, taken away. Let me see. Elisha replied, "Please let me inherit a double share of your spirit and become your successor." Now, basically, he's saying, I want to become the next prophet after you, and I want a double amount of your miracles. But this is what Elijah said. "You have asked a difficult thing," Elijah replied. "If you see me when I am taken from you, then you will get your request. But if not, then you won't." Now, what does this taken away mean? Well, we will see. This is a very interesting verse. We're going to be looking at that now. As they were walking along and talking, suddenly a chariot of fire appeared, drawn by horses of fire. Drawn by horses of fire, it drove between the two men, separating them. Then Elijah was carried by a whirlwind into heaven. Elisha saw it and cried out, "My father, my father, I see the chariots and charioteers of Israel." And as they disappeared from sight, Elisha tore his clothes in distress. Now, there's a lot to talk about in these two verses. Let's first look at verse 1, where Elijah is taken away. Now, in the future, Elisha will also have an encounter with fire from heaven. But in heaven, if you read the book of Daniel, what happens is there is an angel for Israel. There is a section of heaven dedicated for protecting Israel. Like the angel in charge of basically all that is Michael. And these are the charioteers of Israel. I might ask, maybe Elisha just said that in distress or something. But remember, the Bible is inspired by God. So that's that. Now, Elijah was carried by a whirlwind. That means he didn't exactly die. He was just carried up into heaven. Now, remember this. When this whole incident happened, remember Elijah folded his cloak. Even the small details to think of. When this whole thing happened, he dropped his cloak, basically. You might think, how is it even going to be important? Well, you'll see. Now, why is Elijah saying, "My father, my father"? Was Elijah Elisha's father? No. What happened was, it's basically like they've been friends so long. He's basically treating Elijah like his father because he's the protege of Elijah. Elisha saw it and cried out, "My father, my father, I see chariots and charioteers of Israel." And as they disappeared from sight, Elisha tore his clothes in distress. Now, in the Bible, whenever someone's in distress, they just tear their clothes. Now, in the modern day, when you are in distress, please don't tie your clothes. So that's that. Now, let's go to the rest of the chapter. Now, this chapter is divided into two sections actually. Yeah, the first section is Elijah being taken up into heaven, and the rest is Elisha's first miracles. Now we'll be looking at the rest of the verses, which are verses 13 to 18, where they talk about Elijah being taken up into heaven. Elisha picked up Elijah's cloak, which had fallen when he was taken up. I told you. Then Elisha returned to the bank of the Jordan River. Now, what had happened was, let's say they were somewhere around this side of the Jordan River. Then after they parted, they went to the other side. They walked some distance, but now Elisha is returning back. But he now needs to find somewhere to go past the Jordan River. Now, the Jordan River. So, let's continue. Now, After Elijah had went up into heaven and all that stuff, Elisha went, took up Elijah's cloak, went back and parted the Jordan River again. I don't know what Moses was thinking. I mean, that used to be his thing, now it's not his thing anymore, sadly. Then a group of prophets came to Elisha and said this: let's go search for Elijah, your master, because the Lord might have taken him up into some hill or something. But Elisha said no. But they kept pestering him until he said, all right, send them. But they couldn't find him because Elijah had been taken up into heaven. Okay, so after this whole incident, Elisha's first miracles happened in 2 Kings chapter 2. One day, the leaders of the town visited Elisha. We have a problem, my lord, they told him. This town is located in pleasant surroundings, as you can see, but the water is bad and the land is unproductive. So this is what Elisha did. Bring me a new bowl with salt in it. So they brought it to him. Then he went out to the spring where the water comes from and sprinkled some salt on it. Then the water became good. This is what Elisha said. This is what Elisha said. This is what the Lord says. I have purified this water. It will no longer cause death or infertility. And the water has remained pure ever since, just as Elisha said. Now let's go to the last few verses here. Now Elisha left Jericho and went up to Bethel. Remember, they came from Bethel. But then a group of about 40 boys came and started making fun of him, saying, "Go away, Baldy." They chanted, "Go away, Baldy," they said. Elisha turned around and looked at them, and he cursed them in the name of the Lord. Then 2 female bears came and mauled all 42 of them. It's not 40, it's 42. From that, Elisha went to Mount Carmel and finally returned to Samaria. Now you're thinking, wow, Elisha must have had some kind of temper. But let's just look at this. It could be a sign, not some temper, because he cursed in the name of the Lord. Also, we should make fun of other people, especially because they are bald or something. Other physical traits that they cannot take care of. So, now time for our last chapter today. 2 Kings chapter 3. War between Israel and Moab. Alright, so let's continue. Ahab's son Joram began to rule over Israel in the 18th year of King Jehoshaphat, in Judah. He reigned in Samaria 12 years. Now, remember I told you about Ahaziah and stuff? This is his brother reigning over Israel. Now, remember during this time, Moab rebelled against Israel? Yeah, this is happening right now. So, Joram allied with the king of Judah, Jehoshaphat, the king of Edom. And they basically are like some team to take care of the Moabites. The Moabite king was actually a shepherd who would give lots of tribute to the king of Israel during the time of Ahab. After he died, he stopped paying tribute and started rebelling. So after this whole thing happened, this big team came to fight Moab. But there was a desert there. Because the place where they were was so the place where they were was the wilderness of Edom. And according to the name, it's a wilderness. And it is a wilderness. So there they couldn't drink any water. So Jehoshaphat said, Jehoshaphat's a good guy actually. He said, "Is there any prophet nearby?" Then what happened was, I believe the king of Edom or Joram said, "That is Elisha, prophet of the Lord." Actually, it is Joram's officials. They replied, Elisha's son of Shaphat is here. He used to be Elijah's personal assistant. Jehoshaphat said, Yes, the Lord speaks through him. So the king of Israel, King Jehoshaphat of Judah, and the king of Edom went to consult with Elisha. Elisha said to basically Joram, why don't you talk to some pagan prophets of your father and mother? But King Joram of Israel said, No, for it was the Lord who called us 3 kings here, only to be defeated by the Moabites. This is what Elisha replied. As surely as the Lord Almighty lives, whom I serve, I wouldn't even bother with you unless the king of Judah was here. Find a person who plays the harp. So, I wouldn't even bother with you except for my respect for King Jehoshaphat of Judah. Now bring me someone who can play the harp. While the harp was being played, the power of the Lord came upon Elisha. And he said, This is what the Lord says. The dry valley will be filled with pools of water. You will see neither wind nor rain. You will have plenty for yourselves and your cattle and other animals. But this is only a simple thing for the Lord, for he will make you victorious over the army of Moab. You will conquer the best of their towns, even the fortified ones. You will cut down all their good trees, stop up all their springs, and ruin all their good land with stones. The next day, about that time, when the morning sacrifice was offered, waters suddenly appeared. But this is the cool thing. Now, other than the fact that it was cool, let me tell you. Whenever the sun rises, you notice the sun looks a little red, right? That red reflected off the water. So when the Moabites saw it, a big army was there. The Moabites saw it, they thought blood was there. They thought Judah, Israel, and Edom all fought against each other and killed them. The army of the Moabites said, they all got angry and killed each other. Come, let's go take the plunder. But when they came there, the armies of Judah, Israel, and Edom chased them, and the armies of Moab ran. And everything God said came true. The battle quickly started happening, with tons of cities being destroyed, plundered, and pillaged. It was all kinds of cities were being destroyed. The good trees were being cut down. So, they destroyed the towns, covered their good land with stones, stomped up all the springs, and cut down all the good trees. Finally, only Kir Hareseth and its stone walls were left. But men with slings surrounded it and attacked it. Now, this is a sign that God keeps his promises. God keeps his promise with Abraham, with Jehu, that his descendants would be kings up to the 4th generation. And here God keeps his promise. Now, when the king of Moab saw that he was losing the battle, he led 700 of his swordsmen in a desperate attempt to break enemy lines into Edom. But they failed. So, do you know what the king of Moab did? He offered his own son in the fire. Basically, a burnt offering of his eldest son next to the wall. Now, this is very bad. All these pagan things they are doing. And that eldest son would have been the next king and sacrificed him as a burnt offering on the wall. So there was great anger against Israel. And the Israelites withdrew and returned to their own land. And that's 2 Kings 1-3. Now, we learnt about Elijah confronting King Ahaz. We learnt about Elijah being taken into heaven. We learned about Elisha's first miracles. And we learned about the war between Israel and Moab. We learned that God keeps his promises. So we can trust. Who can we trust in? God. Everyone else might just not might not be is all untrustworthy. They all some if you trust somebody else, they might betray you. Like Judas betrayed Jesus, but Jesus knew what would happen to him. But the people can betray you, but the only person who will not and will stay by you if you obey him is God. So God keeps his promises. So now, bye. See you soon. The end.